Hi, this is Jeff Blauette, technical agronomist with Cooperative Farmers Elevator. And on this week's Field Friday segment, one of the topics of conversation is, we've kind of had an area-wide decent rain for once, one of the first ones we've had all year. Unless you're in around the Sioux Center and that type of an area where you had too much rain. Most of the area had a nice rain, good soaker, like I say, something we haven't had for a while. But what's that mean to our soybean crop? I think we've got a lot of room for that to help our soybean yields, probably more so than the corn. The corn, obviously, it'll help some, but I think the beans is where we have the most room for benefit yet, being only in early August. Soybeans are kind of an adaptive crop. They have a lot of room to add yield if things are right over a long period of time. Given the growth stage we're at, a lot of these beans now are kind of in that R4 to, some are even probably as far as R5, that reproductive growth stage 5. So R4 would be a 3/4 inch long pod at one of the top 4 nodes. And then R5 would be, some seed developing inside those pods at one of the upper 4 most nodes that have at least an 1/8 inch size. So there's probably about the 2 stages we probably are most commonly at today. If we're in that stage, we're kind of in that area where we may or may not have much room for flowers anymore. That's about the growth stage where flowering starts to shut down. We don't get any more flowers at the top. We also don't really get much more for vegetative growth. We're not putting a lot more leaves on. That plant starts to shift really rapidly into filling those green, filling those beans and filling those pods that they've pollinated and tried to grow. So that's the stage we're at. There's a lot of the yield obviously is yet to be determined. So what we're hoping to get out of this, nice weather and nice rain here, if we do have more flowers, you'll get that little cluster of flowers here that show up here late at the top of the plant. That's great, another spot for some more pods to pollinate. If we're a little bit past that, we still have a lot of room to grow. A lot of the beans, if they aren't flowering anymore, they just got done. So there's a lot of flowers that probably just pollinated. It'll keep more of those from aborting, which is obviously a good thing. And then a little bit lower on the plant, we've got some flat pods. Hopefully we can keep those 4-bean pods from aborting down to a 3-bean, or the 3-bean pods from aborting down to a 2-bean pod. Hopefully we can stave some of that off. That'll obviously add yield. The other thing we can gain yet, obviously, is if we have beans that have adequate nutrient uptake and enough moisture to grow adequately, obviously we've got a lot of room for that seed to get bigger as we develop here. So all those things are room for that soybean to grow and add yield. The old adage is July rain makes corn and August rain makes beans. That's kind of why. We've got a long ways to go to determine the yield on these beans, and this rain kind of came in a nick of time to really help us out. Obviously, we've had a lot of drought stress in a lot of these areas this year, especially to the west. If we've got pockets of beans that were kind of really starting to lose color, starting to get that brownish look in pockets, rain's obviously going to help everything that's still alive, but there's a lot of damage already done to those beans from drought stress, and they may not gain a lot. You get a field like this that's all green yet, under the drought stress, they were rolling their leaves upside down during the heat of the day and kind of looking like they were stressed, but they hung in there pretty well, and this is pretty good ground here. But those beans have the most room to grow, most room to add yield yet. So, there's no miracle here. We're not going to resurrect, pockets of beans that were burnt up, obviously, if they were, like I say, brown is bad in any crop for the most part. So I think if the beans have looked like they were just a little bit short of moisture, they're going to have a lot of room to grow, and I think there's a lot of potential there. With rain, we're going to probably see this cooler weather, more dampness around now. We've got a lot more moisture around. We'll probably have more dews. We'll have more of this cool weather, dew hanging around longer. That also adds to our disease risk. We'll put some of these fungicide applications to the test. Do we get much residual out of those? Obviously, if we applied fungicide a couple weeks ago, all the new growth that's developed above that plant after the fungicide application is not protected, but we still should have some residual holding out on some of that middle of the canopy, and that'll be worth something for sure. So things we'll have to watch for. We kind of been waiting for this for a long time, and we finally got a nice rain, and hopefully it'll help us with a bountiful harvest. So just wanted to touch on what to expect from our bean crop, and we'll see you next week.